touchdown, Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Rammer, jammer, yellow hammer, come see how we rock this. Alabama fans the best, there's no way you can top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Welcome into the process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst at Touchdown Alabama magazine. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube page. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button below so you can stay updated on all of our content here at Touchdown Alabama magazine. It is Tuesday, the first show of the week. You guys can check out the process every Tuesday and Thursday evening right here on our YouTube page. This episode, I want to take a look at some interesting developments when it comes to the Tide's 2021 recruiting class. Of course, they have 21 verbal commits at the moment, but they still have a plethora of talented prospects still on their recruiting board with limited spots left here in this 2021 recruiting class. So I want to take a look at some of the difficult decisions that the Tide's coaching staff will have to make in the coming months. I want to break that down, but before I break all of that down, I do have to hit you guys with those recruiting updates. But before we even hit that, I want to hit you guys with some impressive plays made by Tide commits from this past weekend. So with that being said, let's get the process started. We are going to get this week of plays started with the Tide's 2021 four-star quarterback commit Jalen Miro dropping back and throwing a 40-yard touchdown pass in the face of pressure, as pressure is going to be right in his face, and he's going to put some air on the ball, throwing a great ball as his wide receiver, his running back on this particular play, as it happens to be, is not going to have to break his stride to adjust to the football, and he's going to just take off once he catches it and runs in a 40-yard touchdown. Great play by one of the Tide's top commits in the 2021 recruiting class. Next, we are going to go to one of the guys Jalen Miro will throw to in the future, and A.J. Hall, the 5-star wide receiver on TouchdownAlabama.com's independent recruiting rankings, as he is going to basically going a hitch route, which is what was designed on the play. He sees quarterback is in trouble. He sees quarterback is rolling to his side, so he's going to streak up the sideline, help his quarterback out. His quarterback throws a great ball, and his 6'3", 6'4" wide receiver is able to use his athleticism to make a guy miss and runs in a touchdown. One of the two touchdowns he made on Friday night for Bloomingdale High School. We are going to round out this group of highlights with the Tide's 4-star defensive back commit Kane Williams picking up a fumble and returning it back for a touchdown. As you guys can see, Williams has put on some weight heading into his senior season here. His weight is definitely on display on this particular play, as he's going to pick the ball up and return it all the way to the house, as he's going to show that he can make touchdowns out of turnovers. So those are the highlights I wanted to hit you guys with on today. Now we are going to roll into a couple of recruiting updates. We are going to get these recruiting updates started with the Tide's 2022 4-star defensive end Justice Finkley, who I got a chance to see in action on Thursday night. He was very impressive. Be sure to check out the highlights that I posted on our YouTube page of what I saw from Finkley. Included in those highlights is a couple of notes that I jotted down basically and provided right there in those highlights. I broke down some of the things that really stuck out to me about the 4-star defensive end and his performance. I also got a chance to catch up with him after the game. He talked about his relationship with the Tide's coaching staff, his daily contact with the staff. Also talked about his special relationship with a Pac-12 school. So be sure to check out that article over at TouchdownAlabama.com. It is a subscriber-only article, so be sure to pick up your subscription to TouchdownAlabama.com today. After the Tide were involved in a historical shootout on last Saturday night against the Ole Miss Rebels, I got a chance to gauge some of the reactions from a couple of the Tide commits and targets in the 2021 recruiting class. Be sure to check out their reactions over at TouchdownAlabama.com as well. The Tide was included in a top 5, a final 5 recently on today, as 5-star defensive tackle Mason Smith released his final 5 and included the Tide. Of course, when it comes to Mason Smith, he is one of the guys I am going to talk about a little later in the show, as the Tide's coaching staff will have to make some tough decisions prioritize which recruits they really want to take here in this 2021 recruiting class. Also, be sure to check out the latest edition of Smitty's Film Room as I broke down the film of one of the Tide's top commits and 5-star athlete, AJ Hall. Be sure to check out that over on our YouTube page. In Smitty's Film Room, I break down the film of some of the Tide's top targets and commits in each recruiting class. So be sure to check out that latest episode of Smitty's Film Room on our YouTube page. Those are the recruiting updates I wanted to hit you guys with today. Now I am going to roll into a couple of tough decisions that the Tide's coaching staff have to make in the coming months. When discussing how the Tide could close out this class, when you think about the number of prospects that they could bring in the 2021 recruiting class, you have to start with the fact that they have 21 recruits verbally committed at the moment. Technically, they have 22 guys in this 2021 recruiting class because 4-star tight end in the 2020 class and Caden Clark, who signed with the Tide in the 2020 recruiting class, has taken a gray shirt, which basically means he will come in with this 2021 recruiting class. So the Tide technically has 22 guys verbally committed in the 2021 recruiting class, adding in Caden Clark, the 4-star tight end out of Akron, Ohio, by the way of Archbishop Hobart High School. Now looking at the fact that the Tide has that plethora of talent on their recruiting board, starting with a good number of defensive backs. They currently have defensive backs committed in the 2021 recruiting class. When you look at Devontae Smith, Kadarius Callaway, who will most likely play defensive back, also have a commitment from Kyrie Jackson, along with Kane Williams, the 4-star safety out of Louisiana. And when you look at their recruiting board, they have Terrion Arnold, the 4-star defensive back, 4-star safety, Quincy McKinstry, the 5-star athlete out of Pinson Valley High School. They have Sage Ryan, a defensive back out of Louisiana. Also Jordan Gilbert, another defensive back out of Louisiana. And when you look at this list, they have been recruiting McKinstry for so long. They are still in the running for him. You can make the argument that they are one of the favorites alongside Auburn heading into his October 25th decision. So I think he is a take no matter what. Quincy McKinstry, if he wants to commit to the Tide is going to take him. I think that is the same thing with Terrion Arnold, the 4-star safety out of Florida. Nick Saban has been very involved in both of those guys' recruitments. I think they are two of their top targets when it comes to the rest of this recruiting cycle. They have been two of the top targets for most of this recruiting cycle, especially at the defensive back position. So I think those guys have first dibs. I think something that is interesting about Arnold is the fact that he is in no rush to make a decision. He possibly could make a decision during the traditional signing period, which means he could possibly make a decision in February, not in December. Will the Tide's coaching staff wait? I think they will, because they like him so much. He is a special athlete here in this 2021 recruiting class. But that is just one of the tough decisions that the Tide's coaching staff will have to make. Looking at Sage Ryan, with him still being in the running with him, he has them included in his top 3. Will they try to go for him? He seems like a guy that they really like here in this 2021 recruiting class. That is still in the mix here when it comes to those difficult decisions that the Tide's coaching staff will have to make. Then you move up towards the front of the defense. When you look at the defensive line, the Tide currently has commitments from 3 defensive tackles. When you look at Anquin Barnes, Damon Payne, and also adding on Tim Keenan III. They also have commitments from defensive end Monkel Goodwine. You can also throw Dallas Turner in the mix, who will most likely play outside linebacker and be an edge rusher at the next level. But the Tide looks at 2 more defensive linemen here in this 2021 recruiting class. And when you look at their recruiting board, they have a couple of guys to choose from. Of course, I talked about Mason Smith, who has the Tide in his top 5 at the moment. I don't feel the Tide is in the best position with Smith, just based off the fact that he has visited LSU recently along with Georgia. I think those schools are possibly in better positions with him than the Tide are. But the Tide still have a couple of other defensive linemen still on their recruiting board here, including JT Tuamawala out of the West Coast, who the Tide is looking at very hard. I think the Tide is still involved in his recruitment. I think if visits were allowed, I think the Tide, if they were able to get to Moala on campus, I think they could be in a great position with them. But they have a couple of other guys alongside him still on their recruiting board when it comes to the defensive line. You also have guys like Thomas Blvd E, the 4-star defensive end who is based out of Texas, along with Shemar Turner, another 4-star defensive end out of Texas. And when you look at those guys, the Tide can only take a limited amount of those guys. Of course, they cannot take all of them. They want to add on too, but when you look at Quincy McKinstry still on the recruiting board, also Terrion Arnold, if they take 2 of those guys along with the combination of McKinstry and Terrion Arnold, that may be the end of their recruiting class. Of course, there will be a great mix. There will be a great class to close out if you can get 2 of those defensive ends, 2 of those defensive linemen, adding them on with Quincy along with Terrion and Arnold. That will be a great class, but you still have Xavier Sori still out there. The Tide's coaching staff has shown great interest in him. I think they are the favorite to land him at the moment. He is an athlete who can play all over the field. They have expressed playing him in multiple positions at the next level. I think he will be a linebacker, inside linebacker most likely, especially if he comes to Tuscaloosa. The Tide's coaching staff has a great relationship with them. I talked about his relationship with Sal Sinceri in the past. Another tough decision that the Tide's coaching staff will have to make, trying to balance out all of this. And also on the offensive side of the football, do they want to add on a running back? Will they have space? If they want to have space, they will have it, but will they have space if they want to close it out with these guys? Of course, they have running back targets still on the board. Started with Kamar Whedon, the 5-star running back who is still on the board for the Crimson Tide. Look at other guys who have not made a commitment yet. Donovan Edwards, a 4-star running back out of Michigan. You have Joseph McKay, a 3-star running back out of Phoenix City High School in Phoenix City, Alabama. You have all of these guys still on the Tide's recruiting board. And if the Tide wants to add a running back, how does that affect those defensive linemen, those linebackers, and also those defensive backs who they still want? Do they want to add on another wide receiver to the 3 wide receivers who they currently have verbally committed? When you look at Christian Leary, AJ Hall, along with Corey Brooks, do they want to add on a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., the long 4-star wide receiver who stands at 6'4", an athletic kid who's a special talent at that wide receiver position? Do they want to put all of their chips in on him and add him to their 2021 recruiting class as a luxury, in my mind, just based off the amount of talent that those 3 guys who they currently have verbally committed have? Do they want to add on also another offensive lineman? Looking at Amarius Mims, who announced his commitment on October 15th with this special offensive line class who they currently have verbally committed. I think Amarius Mims at this point will be a luxury as well. Of course, they have a very impressive offensive line. Looking at Terrence Ferguson and Brockermeyer twins along with J.C. Latham, adding Mims will make this undoubtedly a historical class for the Crimson Tide. It is quite historical already, but adding Amarius Mims, they could possibly cement their legacy as possibly the best offensive line group assembled in one recruiting class. So the Tide's coaching staff has to make some difficult decisions over the next couple of months. Do they want to add on another running back? Do they want to add on do they want to add on one running back because they do not have one in this recruiting class? Do they want to add on another wide receiver? Do they want to add another offensive lineman with this great group of offensive linemen who they currently have committed? I know they're going to add on a couple of more defensive prospects, but who do you add on? Who gets the priority over other guys? In my mind, I think Quincy and Terrion Arnold are priority targets right off the top. I think Thomas Blvd E is right up there in the mix as well, with them having a great relationship with the Tide's coaching staff. I'm starting to think Shamir Turner is also in that mix as well, and I definitely think Xavier Sori is right there as well. So the Tide's coaching staff will have to make some difficult decisions. They have squeezed guys in recruiting classes in the past when the numbers have not looked to be in their favor. You never know, a guy may take a gray shirt, similar to what Caden Clark did in the 2020 recruiting class. But I think it's going to be quite interesting moving forward here over the next couple of months when it comes to what the Tide's coaching staff will do when they're looking at 2021 That will wrap up this episode of The Process. Be sure to hit that subscribe button below before you leave. Then head over to touchdownalabama.com. Pick up your subscription today. With that subscription, you will be able to read all of our subscriber-only articles. Get your hands on our yearly print magazine issue. Also read our in-depth draft projections for each Tide player who is eligible to declare for the NFL draft in that given year. Also, be sure to pick up a subscription so you can read our in-depth scouting reports when it comes to each Tide commit in each recruiting class. You also get an opportunity to dive into our forum, get a chance to message multiple Alabama fans from across the world. So be sure to pick up your subscription at touchdownalabama.com today. Then head to your Apple App Store or the Google Play Store to download the Touchdown Alabama app. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama magazine.
Process.